A cold air intake is a great first modification if you don't have a ton of experience with working on your Bronco, and if you do have a lot of experience with working on your Bronco, then you know how easy it is to install one. So in today's video, we're going to go over the benefits of a cold air intake, and we'll even show you how to install one. Now before we jump into the benefits of a cold air intake and how to install one, this is the Injen cold air intake kit for the Ford Bronco. And you can either purchase this with a oiled air filter or a dry air filter. If you don't know the difference between the two, I'll link a video down in our description to be able to help you out with that. Also, I want to mention I will be installing this into a 2.7 liter Bronco, but if you have the 2.3 liter, they also sell this kit for that as well. Now let's jump into the benefits of a cold air intake. For starters, you're going to be able to get a lot more airflow, and usually colder air depending on what kit you go with. And with that more airflow and colder air, you'll actually be able to get some performance gains out of it. Now, for example, the Injen kit is proven to give up to 13 horsepower and 13 more foot-pounds of torque by installing this. And besides the power benefits, you get some other benefits out of it as well. You get improved throttle response, usually better fuel mileage, some cool turbo noises, and you'll be able to put a bigger air filter in it, which is a huge plus in itself. Now, as far as the design of this airbox goes, it's pretty interesting. They actually copied Ford's original design of their factory airbox. So essentially on the factory airbox, you'll have a plastic piece that's right in front of the grill, and air will travel through there into that plastic piece and then into the factory airbox. Well, Injen basically has the same design. They basically have a channel that will allow air to come through the grill and then into the air filter, giving you the best opportunity to get cold air. Before I ramble on any more about this kit, let's go ahead and rip the factory airbox out of our Bronco and get this new one installed. Before we jump into today's install, if you have any questions about the tools that we're using, check out cjponyparts.com/tools or click the link in the corner of the video for a free video and PDF file showing you what tools you should have and how to use them properly and safely. To start this install off, we're going to remove our diverter valve wiring harness. Simply pull back on this white tab here, push down, and release. Next, we're going to remove the hose going to the diverter valve. Just start off by loosening this clamp here and moving it back. Now we're going to remove the 3 bolts that hold on the charge pipe. Now we're going to disconnect the hose that's going to the passenger side turbo. So come over to where the 2 charge pipes actually meet each other and then head down to this C-clip here. Now what you're going to do is you're just going to push back or pull back towards you, then push down, and that'll release the C-clip, and then you can pop the charge pipe out. Now we're going to loosen the clamp that holds on the driver's side charge pipe. So we're now going to remove both of the crankcase lines going onto the side of the intake, and it's pretty easy to do this. So for the one with the red tab, you're going to want to push on the bottom until it releases and then pull. And as for this second one here, you're going to just push in on the yellow for it to release the tabs and then pull. Now that we have our crankcase lines out of the way, we're actually going to go ahead and remove the driver's side charge pipe here. Now we're going to remove the lower part of the intake, but to do that, we have to remove this bolt here first. And then after you remove the bolt, go ahead and loosen up this hose clamp here. This will be on the passenger side of the car. Head over to the driver's side and loosen up this hose clamp as well. Once you have those 3 things done, then you can remove this lower intake piece. Now we're going to remove the bolt that holds on the side of the intake, and that bolt is right down here on the driver's side. I have a really small 8mm wrench, and that seems to be the best thing for it. Now we're going to loosen up the hose clamp that goes to the driver's side turbo. Once you have the hose clamp loosened, just go ahead and start pulling up on it. Just like that. So after you remove the bolt out of the side of the intake there, you're going to want to grab your Injen tool from the kit and go down to this hose here with the red tab. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put it on the black tubing there. And then you're just going to want to push up on the tool to release the clips. You'll hear it click, and then the hose will be off. And then you can finally remove this piece out of the engine bay. Pop the clip off here for the front of the factory intake. And make sure you're keeping all of the hardware, because we might end up using some of the factory hardware then. Unplug the IAT sensor, just simply push in on the clip, and pull the plug, set that off to the side. Now come over to the factory airbox and remove the 8mm bolt that holds the factory airbox onto the Bronco. Loosen the hose clamp going to the factory airbox. And once that's loosened, you can go ahead and pull the airbox out. So we now have to remove the passenger side intake tube going to the turbo. Now on the other side, the bolt was hard to get to, and on this side, the bolt's a little bit harder to get to. Now this is going to be a 10mm instead of an 8mm like the other side, and to give you a better idea of where the bolt actually is, you see the intakes here, and then you have the block. Right below that is the bolt. So go ahead, grab a 10mm wrench. You're gonna wanna have a mini one, and just loosen that bolt until it wants to come out. After you remove that bolt from the side of the engine block, go ahead and remove this entire intake piece from the turbo. After you get the intake tubing off the passenger side turbo, go and grab your factory airbox, because we're actually going to utilize one of the grommets that are on it for our new airbox. So this is the area where we took the bolt out earlier that actually mounts the factory airbox to the chassis. You're simply just going to grab a flathead, push up on the metal piece, pull it out, and then take off the rubber, and then we'll transfer this over to the new airbox. All right, so we have the Injen cold air intake kit here. This is our factory grommet from the factory airbox. Simply just gonna put this into this hole here. After you get the rubber in, grab your metal piece, slide that on. And this is now ready to go inside the engine bay of our Bronco. So this will go in here just like the factory airbox did. And then you'll use the factory hardware that we took out earlier for the factory airbox for the new Injen cold air intake. After you have the airbox secured, go ahead and put it back in the factory clip. At this point, we can go ahead and put our oiled filter in. It's pretty easy, just simply slide it in. And then once the air filter is sealed, go ahead and turn it, and that'll lock it in place so it can't come out. Once you have the air filter in, go ahead and grab the passenger side intake tube and the adapter that's supplied in the kit. We're gonna put the adapter over this hole in the passenger side intake tube, and then use the hardware that they provided in the kit to be able to tighten this down. While we still have our new passenger intake tubing out, grab your stock air filter box again and remove the IAT sensor. You'll simply just turn, and then once you have it turned, just start kind of wiggling it back and forth, and it'll pull out. Now that you have the IAT sensor out, go ahead and throw it in the adapter that you just got done securing down. Now we can put our 2-inch to 3-inch coupler on the passenger side turbo. After you tighten this hose clamp down, you can go ahead and throw the passenger intake tubing on that. Like I said, when you have that coupler tightened down on the turbo, you can put in the passenger side intake tubing. Now I was wrestling with this off camera a little bit. I found it is a little bit easier to take out the IAT sensor when you're trying to maneuver this in there. Just kind of want to slide it down in there. Get this wire loom out of your way. Kind of want to kick the bottom down here, and then as you're doing that, aligning the intake tube up with the coupler coming off the turbo. After you wrestle the passenger intake tubing onto the coupler, go ahead and tighten it down. I will say if you try to get it on the coupler first and then fitting it into the air filter, that's definitely the easier way. Now that we have the passenger side intake tubing ran and secured for the most part, it's time to work on the driver's side. So you actually want to grab the intake piece that we pulled off the driver's side of the engine and steal the grommet from it to transfer over to our new intake. Simply just kind of fold it over and push it through. Now grab the driver's side intake pipe, have the shiny port here facing the ground, and put the grommet in on the top side here. Now grab your 2 1/4 to 3-inch coupler and stick it on the driver's side turbo inlet. Don't forget your clamp, of course. So that's all the way down. Grab your clamp, spin this guy around, and start tightening it. After you tighten that coupler down, go ahead and grab the driver's side intake tube and attach it to the other side of this coupler. And of course, don't forget your clamp. Before we leave the driver's side, we're just gonna go ahead and connect all of our crankcase hoses again. So the one with the orange tab is gonna go on the shiny port here. Make sure it clicks into place. Then you're gonna grab your crankcase line that has the yellow tab. Put that on the bottom. Last but not least, you have the red tab, which was for the top. Now we're going to connect our driver's side and our passenger intake tubes together with this coupler that they provide. Once you have it in its correct place, go ahead and tighten down the clamps. So our intake tubing is basically together at this point. We just need to start securing it. First, we're going to start with this bolt here, and we are just using the factory bolts to do so. Inside the kit's going to be these new mounts for the charge pipe. Start off by just taking the nut off the end here, taking your washer off, and then you're going to thread it into the Injen intake pipe. You'll have to put one here, and then there's another spot on the driver's side intake pipe. And while we're here, we can go ahead and re-plug in our IAT sensor connector. At this point in the install, we're basically just going to start reinstalling things. And to start that off, we're going to do the charge pipe first, and then we'll work on the next step after that. One other thing that you need to grab from the factory airbox, you're going to look at the driver's side intake tube and grab this hose that goes to the diverter valve, because we're going to switch it over to our new intake. All right, so we're almost done here. We just have 2 more steps left. And one of them is plugging in the diverter valve. And then the other is mounting on the charge pipe so it's nice and secured. All right, so we're all wrapped up with the install. And now the moment that we all been waiting for, we're gonna hop in the Bronco and see how the intake sounds. Well, we're all wrapped up with the install. I gotta say, I am super happy with how this install went. It was a little bit of a process getting this cold air intake kit in here, but once it's in there, I couldn't be more happy. It looks awesome inside the engine bay, and the sounds that come out of this are even more amazing. Now, if you'd like to pick up this kit for yourself, go over to cjponyparts.com. Now remember, this kit that we installed today is for the 2.7 liter, but you can also buy the exact same system for the 2.3 liter. Now it's time to drop a gear and disappear. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, if you need any off-road parts, just click the link down below in our description.